Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Hello and welcome to the Women Today podcast. This week we were joined by a woman who shared with us her experience of growing up in Peel in the Second World War. We discussed why it's so difficult for new mums to talk about their mental health, and I went along to meet local primary school students celebrating a big birthday. But first, we had to reflect on the terrible scenes experienced in France the previous weekend. This weekend, the world was shocked by the terror attacks in Paris. More than 100 people were killed across the city, and earlier today, the Isle of Man took part in a minute's silence to honour those who were caught up in the violence. And the topic of our safety here on the island has just been covered in depth on Talking Heads, and Manx Radio's Mandate programme this morning heard from local people who are currently in Paris. Now, in our family, we never keep world events from our children, but it really did strike me this morning at the breakfast table that my 8-year-old knew so much about what had happened, and it made me think about how we talk openly and honestly about devastating world news without instilling a sense of fear in our children. And Kate, I was talking to you about this, and I find it really, really difficult.
Yeah, I can completely understand why you find it difficult. Personally, and obviously I'm speaking as someone who doesn't have children, but I think it is about having an open and honest conversation and answering their questions when they come up. I was thinking back to 2001 when I was just 9 years old, or 10 years old, when the attacks took place on 9/11. And my mum said something interesting to me this morning about that day, because I became really quite obsessed, I suppose, about watching the rolling news stations and watching rolling news on television after the 9/11 attacks. And my mum was saying that there was a point that evening where she came in and she switched the television off and said, "Look, I think that's enough now. We're going to switch it off." And she said to me this morning, that was easy in 2001 because we didn't have mobile phones with the internet on. We didn't have iPads or tablets that we had in our bedrooms. And I think it must be so much more difficult to kind of choose that point when you stop doing it. So I guess it is kind of about, though, watching it with them. And as I say, having that conversation and answering those questions.
I think it is interesting. I'm not at a point where any of our children have got their own phones or tablets or devices like that yet. But Jo, yours do, don't they?
They do. And actually, I'd just like to read a couple of comments from it because I think it's really interesting that my son, who is 11, I came back from doing the breakfast show on Saturday morning. It finishes at 8:30. So the news really was, he just got up and he switched it on and he was really, really interested in what was happening. And before I got a chance to speak to him, he was already watching it at home. And on his Instagram account, he had already put up the Eiffel Tower with the peace sign in front of it, and he put #Pray for Paris. And another girl said, "Why?" And he said, "Because lots of people died in Paris last night because of terrorists." And she says, "Why? Oh, what happened?" And it goes on, and another person who's, again, 11 years old said, "Terrorists are mean." Another girl said, "There's no point in terrorism." And they actually started having a conversation about it. And these kids are 11 years old. And I was quite shocked by it. So I got home and we sat down and I explained to him about it. And do you know what? He actually knew more about it than I did. It was incredible.
I think the thing that really gets me, especially looking at my eldest son who is only 8 this morning, and one of the first things he said was, "Well, I'd never go to Paris." And I just thought, gosh, they've just growing up with this sense of fear and not wanting to do things. And as much as a mother, I'd want to say, when you're older, and I did say, when you're older, you can't live your life like that. You have to go off and do your exploring, do whatever it is you want to do. I know I'd be terrified at the thought of them going off and doing anything like that.
Yeah, those comments came about, how safe is it for travelling, and also because their dad travels all the time. So they were worried straight away for Daddy, should he be travelling? But at the same time, I still think that they think they're invincible. So you have that flash moment where you think that maybe I shouldn't go on that plane. But I try to explain in situations like this, security tightens up more than ever. And when 9/11 happened, my husband actually was travelling at the time. And as he said, it's actually the safest time to travel.
I think also you have to keep in mind whenever we have these conversations that terrorism feeds on fear. That is, by far one of the biggest reasons for it. And I think it's a really obvious thing to say, but I honestly think that you have to carry on, and you have to carry on as normally as possible, because otherwise you're afraid, and that is winning.
Dr. Rebecca Miller is a consultant radiologist at Nobles Hospital and was outlining some of the differences between a radiologist and a radiographer for us earlier. Now, in your day-to-day job, Rebecca, what sort of things are you actually looking for?
Well, I'm a general radiologist with a specialist interest in breast radiology. So in my general job, we will do we cover all the different sort of patients you'll see in the hospital. So we have a broad spectrum of what's going on, from the elderly to the oncology cancer patients to the paediatric patients. But what we will also do is we'll cover the GP patients. So we see a whole spectrum of illness. Some of it is benign and harmless, fortunately. Unfortunately, again, some of it isn't. So we see everything.
So generally, when people come to see you, they are dealing with a certain level of concern, of worry. How do you put them at ease, I guess, at the first instance?
That's a very good question. Naturally, people are always anxious when they come to hospital. I think we all are. I would be anxious if I was a patient. And I think the best thing to do is be open, be honest, communicate well and communicate in a clear way. Doctors tend to use acronyms, as we've talked about before, lots of long letters, lots of long words and jargon. You actually have to talk in straightforward terms that people understand.
Is it okay if you are talking to a doctor and they say something that you don't understand to say, actually, I don't know what you mean. Can you explain that in a better way for me?
I would always encourage people to do that. And generally, when people come and see me, and if they go away with a diagnosis that's quite serious, I will usually say, go away, get yourself a pad and pen, put it in the kitchen or by the phone, write down questions, both yourself and your family, things you want explained, and ask the questions again and again until you're satisfied with the answer that you get, because it's most important that whoever's receiving any medical news understands that news.
How do you handle it personally when you're with a patient and you can see that there is something potentially very seriously wrong with them?
It's difficult for myself because we will often see patients in a snapshot in time. So they will come in to me, say, for an ultrasound scan, and I won't know their background. All I will know is a little bit of information that's been written by one of the doctors, either GP or one of the hospital doctors. So I won't know whether they have any family support or whether they've been recently bereaved or some other tragedy has happened. So if people ask me a direct question, I will give them a reasonably direct answer, but I will also say that there are other possibilities, because you cannot make a diagnosis just based on one tiny piece of information. You have to have the whole picture, and it would be very rash for anybody to say you have X, Y or Z without knowing that whole picture.
In terms of what you actually see then as a radiologist, I mean, what does the image that you're getting actually look like?
It depends on what we're looking at. If I'm looking at a plain film, we've all seen X-rays, and they're just black and white pictures, almost like negative pictures. If you're looking at ultrasound, it's like a fuzzy image. It looks like a very bad TV image, but you get used to looking at it and interpreting it. CT scans, which are the big magnetic scans, well, not magnetic, the X-ray scans that we use, give you a sort of cross-section, so little tiny slices of somebody which you can look at in any plane. They give you a lot more detail, but a typical CT scan may give us about 800 to 1,000 images to look at, and we will look at those on different settings. So we will look specifically at the bones, at the lungs, at the soft tissues. So those 800 images you'll look at in 5 or 6 different ways. So there's a lot of information on a CT scan. If you look at an MR scan, even more information. If I do breast MR, one of our scans, and we do several on each individual patient, one of the scans will produce about 900 images. So there's lots of information, lots of pictures, and it's something that takes a long time to assimilate.
I know that when I've had my 3 children, the first in 2007, the last in 2012, the development that I saw in the ultrasound scan were phenomenal, the detail that was available in the laser scans. I'm wondering about the developments that have been made in your area in terms of technology in recent years.
Well, as I've touched on, the breast MR has transformed things. Particularly in younger women, we are able to see breast disease that we couldn't see before on X-rays or ultrasound, and that makes a big difference to the people, particularly if they've got a strong family history of breast cancer. We can pick things up earlier and hopefully make a big difference to their life and their whole future. One of the latest things that we're looking at now is the 3D breast scanning, which is the digital breast tomosynthesis, and basically it's a type of X-ray, but it's made up of slices through the breast that are put together so that you can look at the breast in 3 different dimensions, and you'll pick up to 40% more cancers by using that technique.
How close are we to getting that over here?
Well, I have to say that the Manx Breast Cancer Support Group have been fantastic at supporting us. I'm optimistic that over the next year we should get that in. I would hope it would be sooner than that, but we'll see how we go. The public have been so generous with the unit. I think we're just grateful for all the support that we've had.
Well, you recently developed the breast MRI service with the support of the Manx Breast Cancer Support Group, and you were actually on this programme a few weeks ago talking about the difference that the dedicated unit's going to make for the Manx breast cancer sufferers. How does it feel being such a critical part of that development?
I think you're part of a team, so I think we all feel that the development is fantastic, and it's a credit to Miss Bellow and her vision for a single unit. It will transform the patients' lives, and also the lives of the women who just come for breast screening, because it'll all be on one dedicated site. It's designed not to look like or feel like a hospital, so that people don't feel like they're going into a hospital setting, which can be quite uncomfortable for some people. So it'll make a huge difference.
Let's just talk about screening, because when we did that special programme with the Manx Breast Cancer Support Group a few weeks ago, I was really, really surprised at the relatively low take-up for the routine breast screening. I think it was, something like 70-odd%. Why is it so low?
Well, I think it's low for a number of reasons. Interestingly, today I've just found out one of the main reasons why it's low is that the people who are invited for screening at their first round when they turn 50 aren't coming. They're the group that we need to target. For some reason, people they're first invited for breast screening when they turn 50. But I think there are a number of reasons for that. I think possibly they're too busy. They're probably working, they've probably got teenage children, and also I think a number of people are actually scared to come for screening because they don't want to find out if something's wrong.
But how do you counter that? Because I can understand that fear of thinking, I don't want to know, I'd rather not know if there was something going on. But, I mean, how can you reassure people that actually it's better to come, find it, please God, early and do something about it?
Well, I think that's exactly the point. We need to encourage people that 9 times out of 10, if we call you back, it's not going to be anything serious or sinister. But if we do find something, it's better to find it early because you're more likely to get a much better outcome. And if we find things early, we can treat them more appropriately.
It is really worrying whenever you're referred to something like the breast clinic, and I had personal experience of that a couple of years ago. But you know what I found really reassuring was that the vast majority of it is done in one day, so you haven't got weeks and weeks and weeks generally, hopefully, of waiting for results. It's done there and then. If you can get that reassurance that you need, hopefully.
Absolutely. That's the whole aim, and the great thing about the new unit is everything will be done on site, whereas previously you were having to walk down to Main X-ray and all over the place, and I think it'll be a far better patient journey.
Rebecca, we're talking about screening and kind of, I suppose, taking your own health into your own hands. I'm just wondering, really, do you practice what you preach?
Yes, I do. I think it would be a bit hypocritical not to. Yes, I did have the letter drop on my mat when I turned 50, and yes, I did go for screening.
I'm also interested in something that you said about the fact that there's a niche for all personalities and interests within the many radiological subspecialities. I wondered what you mean by that.
Well, different people. Doctors are just like everybody else. There are different personalities, and some people people. Some people prefer to be in the quiet somewhere else, and don't really get on well with people. So you get people who love to just report scans. They'll sit in a back room. They won't ever interact with patients, but they will churn through the work and they'll be very good at what they do. You'll get other people who actually enjoy talking to people, and such as the breast work is great because I get to meet people, I get to talk to them, I get to tell them about diagnosis, and also I get to do some practical things. I get to do biopsies and things like that. So there's a vast spectrum of things that you can do as a radiologist, which is why it's such a great specialty to be in.
Well, Dr. Rebecca Miller, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. I know you have to rush back now to go to patients, but we really appreciate you being here and explaining some of those differences between radiology and... I've completely forgotten what I was
radiography.
That's the other one.
The other one.
You see, it was going so well, wasn't it? Yeah.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
This is a really interesting one. The husband of a heroic police officer who died saving hundreds of people on 9/11 has returned his wife's Women of the Year award. Why? Well, because earlier this month, the same award ceremony honoured transgender celebrity Caitlyn Jenner. In an open letter to Glamour magazine, which posthumously awarded his wife the title, James Smith, who's also an NYPD officer, said he found it insulting to the memory of his wife that Caitlyn had been given the award, calling it a slap in the face. Caitlyn, formerly Bruce Jenner, was given the Transgender Champion Award in New York in November, and James Smith's open letter read as follows.
On October the 29th, 2001, I was honoured to accept the Glamour magazine Woman of the Year award posthumously given to my wife, Police Officer Moira Smith. Moira was killed on September the 11th, 2001, while rescuing thousands from the World Trade Center. I was shocked and saddened to learn that Glamour has just named Bruce Jenner Woman of the Year. I find it insulting to Moira Smith's memory and the memory of other heroic women who have earned this award. Was there no woman in America or the rest of the world more deserving than this man? At a time when we have women in the armed forces fighting and dying for our country, heroic doctors fighting deadly diseases, women police officers and firefighters putting their lives on the line for total strangers, brave women overcoming life-threatening diseases, the list of possibilities goes on. Is this the best you could do? I can only guess that this was a publicity stunt meant to resuscitate a dying medium. After discussing this slap in the face to the memory of our hero with my family, I have decided to return Moira's award to Glamour magazine. Sincerely, James J. Smith.
Some of James Smith's open letter. Well, a Glamour magazine spokesperson has told the New York Daily Post they stood by the decision, saying, "We were proud to honour his wife in 2001 and we stand by our decision to honour Caitlyn Jenner." Glamour's Women of the Year awards recognise women with a variety of backgrounds and experiences. But we want to know what you think about this. Was James Smith right in returning his wife's award in protest? Should Caitlyn Jenner have been honoured in the Women of the Year awards in the first place? Let us know what you think. womentoday@manxradio.com, or you can text 166 177. You can go to the Women Today Facebook page. The debate's been going on there for a couple of hours so far this morning. Joe, what are your sort of gut reaction, your thoughts to this?
I just actually would be a bit more offended by seeing that Victoria Beckham had been awarded more than Caitlyn Jenner, because I totally understand why they actually would award Caitlyn Jenner for what she's been through, because it takes somebody with an awful lot of guts to do that, and she has had an awful lot of backlash from the press and obviously people around. Yes, I will sympathise with them. I can understand why, because you cannot put the two people in the same box. But this is not an awards by, it's a Glamour magazine awards. It's supposed to be not so heavy going. It's supposed to be quite light as well. And I think they were right to do what they did.
I've been thinking about this. Can I see his point? No, I don't think I can. I think it doesn't in any way take away from his wife. But as you said, Joe, this is a celebrity magazine. And I don't think you can put a caveat on the issue of bravery, because so many people fight battles every day, don't they? And Caitlyn Jenner has been a huge inspiration to many people.
Absolutely. I don't think you're comparing like with like or apples with apples there. And I'm just a bit unsure of exactly what he's protesting against, because my only thought is that he is protesting against people being transgender. And if that is the case, and that is what he's protesting against, I think that shows even more why it's necessary to have a transgender champion. I think it shows that we need to kind of look at the issue and talk about the issue properly. And I actually think the way he wrote his letter and referring to Caitlyn with her male name that she no longer uses was incredibly disrespectful. And I think it shows even further the misunderstanding that still exists and the need for awards like this.
And why, you just can't put everybody in the same box, can you? You do need to award people for different things and recognise them for that. What are we awarding Victoria Beckham for? Producing a great fashion line that sells well, compared to something that Caitlyn Jenner's done. It's just that you just can't compare.
I think again, Victoria Beckham is hugely inspirational to a lot of people. She's an incredible businesswoman. And again, you're not comparing like with like, are you? So you can't say we're going to award one type of bravery and not award another.
I think if you're going to protest, you may protest against that more so.
I think Part of the problem, though, is that hasn't this come into the spotlight at a really, really unfortunate time, given what we were just talking about, the events over the weekend, and this award ceremony actually happened on the 9th of November, so much earlier this month. Okay, some interesting thoughts on this one, Kate.
Yeah, we were just asking, was he right to return the award in protest? And Jill, Margaret and Joy say simply, absolutely, yes, he was. Carol adds to that, yes, I agree with him. It makes the award a mockery. But Becky Krul says, not at all. Disgusting behaviour and reeks of transphobia. He even dead names Caitlin in his letter. Caitlin is just as much a woman as his late wife. It's important to recognise trans people. Bravery comes in many different forms. And with a murder rate of transgender people higher than ever before, just living your authentic life for some people can be deadly.
And Heather says, it's an award from Glamour magazine, not a Nobel Prize. If James Smith is unhappy and returning the award makes him feel better, then that's his decision. However, I guess he and his family were proud that his wife had been honoured by the magazine originally and gained some pleasure from it until now.
Yeah, we've had one from Patricia Neen saying, since Glamour magazine gives out a variety of awards, it seems perfectly acceptable to give an award in transgender category. Not an easy life for those living it, especially with like this man putting their 2 pennyworth in. And she also goes on to say, this is Glamour magazine we're talking about. If this gentleman feels so strongly, why didn't he return the award after Victoria Beckham received hers for service to the community? There are many amazing women out there, but someone has to first of all recognise and then nominate them. And is Glamour magazine necessarily the recognition we are seeking?
Joe?
Alex says, heroism can take many forms, as does bravery. I think Caitlin's courage takes a different form than his man's wife, but it's just as worthy of recognition. I can't imagine being in either situation and consequently being as strong as either of these women. Who are we to say is a real hero? Surely we all look up to different people, and I'm sure to plenty of people, Caitlin is incredibly heroic.
And we've had one from Jim who says, I could care less that Bruce Jenner thinks he has somehow transformed into a woman. He was born a man and will die as a male. I won't say he will die a man because he gave that right up with this garbage. I totally understand the reasoning behind the returning of the award. Unfortunately, I don't think they will care, since it gains them some much needed publicity. And for those that decry our thoughts and feelings on the matter, I don't care what you think either. I am as entitled to my opinions as you are.
I think that's a really important point about being as entitled to your opinion. And I would, whilst I completely disagree with that comment, I think you are completely right in pointing out that you are as entitled to your opinion. And I think in light of everything that we spoke about at the beginning of the programme and everything that's gone on this weekend, it's a really important time to think about the fact that we are entitled to our opinions and how important it is that we cling on to that right.
As we heard in the news, Tynwald held a moment of silence this morning to mark their respect for those who lost their lives in terrorist attacks on Friday. And since the attacks in Paris, there has been a wave of people changing their Facebook profile pictures to include a filter of the French flag. Now, you probably don't have to look far down your timeline to see someone sporting the tricolour, and Facebook have actually added an app so you can do it in the click of a button and, in their words, support the cause. Now, my profile picture is simply the French flag with nothing behind it, and Kate hasn't changed hers at all. And actually, yesterday we discussed whether or not we should have changed the Women Today profile picture as well. So we want to know what you thought about this. Have you changed your profile picture? If so, why? If you haven't, why not? Let us know what you think. womentoday@manxradio.com, or you can text 166 177, or head over to the Women Today Facebook page. On Twitter, it's @MRWomenToday. Kate, why didn't you change yours?
Honestly, it's something I thought about, and I very, very nearly did change my profile picture. But to be honest, I felt and feel a little bit uncomfortable about it. It's not in any way that I don't think that what happened this weekend was atrocious and disgusting. Of course I do. But I don't think that changing my profile picture is necessary. My friends, and I am only friends with my real life friends on Facebook, know how I feel. And I also think there's an undercurrent of having to do it. And I don't think that's right or fair.
I can see what you're saying about the idea of feeling that you should do it, but I personally feel that in the case of an extreme world event, to use social media as a means of showing that you're aware and that you care about what happened is surely what social media is all about.
But again, I am only friends with my friends and people who know me, and they know that I care and I am engaged, and I don't think I have to use something so horrific to prove that I am engaged with what's going on in the world.
But it's not just friends who see your profile picture, is it? And to see people come together in a show of unity against terrorism, I think that's a really powerful message. And if you take that argument then, Kate, well, why be on Facebook or social media at all? As you say, your friends know you, they know what you stand for, they know what you've been doing, they know where you've been.
But for me, Facebook is about keeping up to date with my friends and what they're up to in their lives, not necessarily to engage with them on a political level or to talk about those kind of extreme topics of conversation. It's for me to know, oh, do you know what, my friend has just been on holiday, or that's what I see social media as for me personally. And I think this whole thing comes down to a personal choice. I don't think it's wrong that you changed your picture. I don't think it's wrong that anyone has done whatever they want. It's about how you feel about it and what you feel comfortable doing.
I think many people have made the argument about the fact that this hasn't been done for other atrocities or incomprehensible acts of violence, and why Facebook has decided to support this cause but not the others. And I would say, in argument to that to do it for every world atrocity, I think, would have taken the power away from this. And I think the reality is, for us here, France is very close. Paris is a city that many of us know well. So this is an act of terrorism which has hit terribly close to home, and it's made such an impact on the world media because, thankfully, touch wood, it is so rare. And it is horrendous to think about people living with this violence and mindless murder on a daily basis. And the fact that we're raising this issue and thinking about that is us having a realisation about how lucky we are to live the way we do.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying in any way that I don't think it's worthwhile marking it, or, you know, I paused yesterday for a minute of silence. I think all those things are incredibly important. But I actually find it more uncomfortable that Facebook, which is a huge, huge international conglomerate, pick and choose which cause we could support in this means through this app. And I think it's personal, and it shouldn't be dictated to by a company.
But it's a social media development, isn't it? Obviously somebody's had this idea, and perhaps in future this will be available for other things that happen.
I suppose they have done it before. They did it when gay marriage was approved in the US, and I didn't, again, put a rainbow filter over my profile picture. I didn't feel that was necessary for me because I know where I stand on it and I know how I feel about it, and so do people that I'm friends with.
Do you know, there aren't many times that I have changed my profile picture to support a particular cause or person, really. The only times I've done it before have been for personal reasons and to support friends. And in both cases, actually, it was friends whose babies had been born. They were critically ill and one of them sadly died. And we, as a group of their friends, changed our profile picture to show that we were thinking about them. And the mothers in both cases said that they found that really comforting. And I think if that's the message that hopefully this gives out to people who've been touched by the violence that happened on Friday, I think it's a worthwhile thing. Keep your thoughts coming in on this.
Women Today, brought to you by citywing.com for your next flight away.
Just before the break, you heard Kate and I discuss our thoughts on the fact that Facebook have offered you this app. You can change your profile picture temporarily to show the French flag in honour of the atrocities that happened at the weekend. We're joined in the studio this afternoon by Dr. Rebecca Miller, who's a consultant radiologist at Nobles Hospital. Before we talk more about your job, Rebecca, you're not on Facebook, but interesting, you said if you were, you wouldn't have changed your profile picture. Why?
No, because I think the atrocities speak for themselves, and I wouldn't feel a need to express my horror at that by putting something on Facebook. I feel very similar to Kate. I don't think I'd need to actually express that. My people around me know exactly how I feel about what happened in Paris.
Interestingly, though, would you wear a poppy?
Yes.
So I would see that as a public demonstration of how you feel about something and wanting to remember something. So I kind of wonder why it's different in that case.
Absolutely, I agree with you. It's a public representation of how you feel about something, but it's a choosing for yourself which one you want to support and what you want to support and what you want to publicly put out there. And that's an individual choice and should be an individual choice.
Hey, some more of your thoughts about the Facebook profile picture.
Yeah, a lot of people have been commenting on our Facebook page, and Sarah says, because I have friends in France, when we asked her why you changed it, she says, because I have friends in France and have visited Paris a number of times and know how easy this has happened and wanted to do something, however small, to tell the terrorists they will not win and to to support the nation that has lost so many of their people to this horrible crime. And Amy added, I'm with Sarah on this. My sister and her family live in France, and we have visited Paris a number of times, where my husband's brother lived for many years. The atrocities that happened are beyond just showing solidarity for those who died in Paris.
Lisa says, I did change it, but then change it to one of world peace to show my support to all who have or are suffering. When Dr. Rebecca Miller was here, I asked her whether or not she would have changed her profile picture had she been on Facebook. She said she wouldn't, but I then asked, would you wear a poppy, for example? It's the first example that sort of came to my mind, but I was also thinking about charity badges and things like that as a public show of support for a particular cause, because somebody's texted in saying, going back to you saying what's the difference between wearing a poppy and changing your Facebook picture, you don't get likes for wearing a poppy. I think it's just, for me though, all about showing that you do identify with something, that you are sort of nailing your colours to the mast almost.
Yeah, I completely get that. But for me, Facebook and my profile picture is not the way that I choose to talk about how I feel about massive international politics or worldwide atrocities. I just feel that is not the place for my Facebook, but it's completely personal.
Alex Brindley, what did you decide to do?
I put the flag on my Facebook page. I did the one that, in Kate's words, 5 minutes ago, although she says, she's more than happy with us doing it, she said it was silly. I don't feel that's a problem. I feel that social media, in its most basic form, is a digital version of being sociable with people. And let's face it, that's how people do it. You mentioned it's how you keep in touch with friends, and, the majority of the time I get to see, Beth, I don't know when you've been decorating at home. Kate, I get lots of photos about when you're, dressed up to go out to a party. This kind of thing appears on Facebook because this is the stuff that people like to put out there and communicate with people. I don't see a problem in basically stating and even feeling like I want to join in solidarity. Solidarity is another word for bandwagon. Just bandwagon is the more gimmicky phrase that's used normally in politics. I don't feel the problem in saying that, actually, yeah, I do feel this because I've been touched by this. I think it's wrong. And you did mention that, yes, there are a lot of other atrocities that don't get the same amount of attention. Well, I think this is the same thing debate when it came to giving minutes silence to lots of different things. It's what people consider touches them more. And in the case of, Paris, this has touched a lot of people in the United Kingdom and the British Isles.
But do you feel then that I don't stand in solidarity with it, or that I don't have the same respect because I didn't change my profile picture?
I would say, not from you not changing your profile picture, having spoken to you about your reasons, if I'm completely honest, it seems that you're more worried about your personal feeling towards it. It's almost akin, I get this with a lot of people who are very... I feel anarchist isn't the word because that's a bit too anti-establishment, but this whole idea that I shouldn't be made to do this and I shouldn't be made to do that, whereas the people who are doing this, on the other side of it, I don't want someone to tell me that it's silly and it's wrong, because quite frankly, your view of telling me that mine is silly and wrong is equally as offensive to me.
And I didn't ever say that it was wrong.
No, but okay. But someone in that position, in that position, saying that I don't want to be made to do that is equally offensive to me as it seems to your side of the argument.
It's just because Kate is a rebel, right?
She is.
She does not want to do what everybody else is seen to be doing. That's it. You just want to be on the outside there, just a little bit cool.
I know, my default position is always to go, oh, well, God, everyone's doing that. I'm not going to do it then. Yeah, definitely. There probably is a bit of that.
Just a couple more thoughts then from Facebook.
Yeah, Alex said, I think it could be easy to overthink this. I changed my profile picture because it's a small mark of respect, and I don't think there's much more to it. I don't want to write a long status about it, she says, but I'm deeply saddened about what happened, and so I changed my picture to reflect that.
It's interesting that you've just been talking about how on Facebook, do you show your political leanings to, your support for this cause. Your show has been made up heavily, and always is, of people exercising their thoughts on topics, which you do yourself, Kate. If you comment on stuff, you comment with your opinion on Facebook to show what you stand for.
Do you know what, though? I think maybe it comes down to this as well. I don't put statuses on Facebook. I really don't do very much on Facebook at all, apart from be tagged in other people's photos. It's unusual for me to even put up my own photos.
She's an it girl, that's all it is, you see.
Let's just finish with Annabelle's comment. I struggled with this as didn't want to look like I jumped on the bandwagon when I knew there were other major wars and terrorist attacks around the world, and also not to look like a Facebook sheep. But then I had the thought about how much Facebook is used worldwide, and I thought I would change it to show solidarity and the world standing united against terrorism. Today I changed it back. That debate will continue on the Women's Day Facebook page, so you can go there, like the page and comment there after the show. Now, I don't know about you, but I really think that there are some people who, when you think about them, you immediately associate them with a certain place. And for me, our studio guest this afternoon is absolutely intrinsic to Peel. Pam Quine, you grew up there, you taught there, you've now retired there, and most days you can be seen walking down Michael Street, usually on a mission, I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
And I bet, Pam, you know everything that goes on in Peel, don't you?
Not everything, but quite a lot, yes. We do try to keep up to date.
It is a place that has changed dramatically in recent years, isn't it? But how do you feel about Peel now? I mean, does it still have that same essence that it was always famed for?
Well, not really, because with the new estates, it's getting to be them and us. You know, they don't always integrate into what's going on in Peel. It's understandable in a way because a lot of these people now work in Douglas or out of Douglas. Naturally enough, they do their shopping in Douglas or they're interested in what's going on. That they do love Peel and they will come in occasionally, but the old Peel has gone, I'm afraid, as I knew it, but then, as I'm always told, you got to move on, and I suppose we have, as long as it's not too drastic a change. I still love Peel.
Well, you clearly do. Take us back then to Old Peel. Now, when you grew up, you lived in Peveril Terrace.
Yes.
And you had first-hand experience of internment during the Second World War. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. Well, we lived in number 3, and that was overlooking the tennis courts and the bowling green. You can't miss it now because I think it's a purpley maroon colour, that house. And it was lovely there. First 6 years were fine. I lived with my father, who's a teacher, my mother, who was a nurse. 3 of her sisters were as well, and an aunt and grandparents. So it was a good family, but I was the only one. But I wasn't spoilt. Those were the days when children were seen and not heard. But we lived there for 6 years, and I can just remember 2 things in particular. And one is my mother taking me out in the yard one day and lifting me up and pointing up to the sky, and there was a big airship went over. It was a horrible big thing. And I remember crying, and she had to take me in the house. So it must have been going over Peel at that time. The second was, oh dear, I tripped over a lawnmower and I dislocated my arm. And in those days, my mother knew the doctor well. He was an old-fashioned doctor. He came up. And I can remember him saying, just hold her tightly round the waist. And he took my lower arm. I can remember it as if it was yesterday. And my upper arm. And he twisted it and turned it, pulled it, and put it back into socket again. I've never had any trouble with it since, except when I broke it a couple of years ago. But it was in a sling then, but I remember crying, and she was rocking me in a rocking chair, and those days she had to be careful that he didn't rock too far backwards.
But it was an affectionate upbringing then, Pam?
Oh, lovely, yes, and we were allowed to be children, you know, and I started school from there, went to the Philip Christian Centre, and I can remember the teachers in there, Miss Mulkton and Miss Gaughan, Catty Mulkton, Winnie Gaughan and Miss Pollitt, and the rocking horse is now in the Lees Museum. So there's a bit of age on that rocking horse in there, I can tell you. But anyway, that was the start. But during that time, I remember coming home and the adults looking so worried and all, and they said, we're going to have to move house. Well, to a 5 and 6 year old, that doesn't mean very much. But as I grew older, they'd had 6 weeks' notice from the government. You've got to go. You've got to get out of that house. Well, where do we go? Well, you've got to look for somewhere. So they had to look for somewhere that was big enough to take everybody, even my grandfather. And it was a struggle. But eventually we did manage to rent Albany House in Albany Road. That's the first one. It's a very nice lady and gentleman got that place now. And I was there all during the war years. But the only memory I have got is going down with my mother to the top of Stanley Road and looking up towards where the barbed wire was. And there were 2 men, and they were just, their arms were on the hands on the barbed wire, and they were looking down, just looking around. Because half of them, it was only because they were Italian or because they were German nationalities. And that was all I ever had dealings with. I mean, I was too young at the time to appreciate that. And then from there, from the Philip Christian Centre, it was up to the cloth workers.
And then you went to Park Road, and you used to have to get the train to school, Pam.
Yes, we had to get the train and go down from where I was living then down to the railway station. Boys at one end, girls the other. Never the twain should meet. We got to Douglas and we had to walk up to Park Road. Well, that's a good way over Apple Street, Mount Havelock and up that. And if it was pouring rain or windy, well, you had to sit in wet clothes. And then when we coming back at night, it was exactly the same thing. And eventually they did have a bus to meet us at the station who would take us right back up to the schools. And then after 2 or 3 years, they took the train off and we had a bus to take us into school. So that was very interesting at Park Road.
Well, school mustn't have been so bad because you decided to go into teaching. We'll talk a bit more about that later. I mean, your father had been a teacher. Was there ever
still was.
Any sense, or did you ever think that, oh, you might try something else? I mean, you mentioned your mother being a nurse.
Well, not really. I always wanted to be. It was either nursing or teaching, you know, and I heard so much about these nurses and things in those days. One of the nurses, the aunts, nursed the Gibbs. And that's how Miss Janet came to be my godmother.
And they were the ones that had the Grove.
Yeah. But I didn't fancy doing it then, you know. So I thought, no, I'd rather go in for teaching. And I'd rather teach younger children. Because my father, he was a very clever man. He did double in physics and chemistry. And he taught to the cloth workers for a while because he couldn't get the job he wanted. And I thought, oh no, if I've got to go in his class. I dreaded having to go into his class. But fortunately, he moved to St Ninians. He got the job at St Ninians and he was there till he retired. So I was, you know, it wasn't quite so bad. But I always wanted to go in for teaching, yes. But I'm surprised I ever got there.
Well, we'll talk a bit more about that later. But you met your husband, Jeff, and you've been married 52 years now.
Yes.
You met him playing badminton?
Yes, at St John's.
Love at first sight?
Was it?
Should say Jeff is sitting on the sofa, well away from the action here, Jeff.
Yes, we got... I don't know, it was love at first. I don't know. We just sort of gelled and that was it, really. And we've been doing that ever since.
Well, you've got 2 daughters. You've got a grandson as well. And, I mean, we talk about Peel and how much you love it. And you are a key member of the Peel Heritage Trust. Yeah. How important would you say, Pam, organisations like that are in keeping the sense of Peel alive?
Very important. I think it's nice for any of our new residents, and quite a few have come to meetings. They are able to come. And we've always had I've never had a problem when I was the secretary getting marvellous speakers to come, you know, to come and talk, Peter Kelly, and just to name 1 or 2, you know. And they've always been so good, you know, to come and so interesting to listen to. And also entertainers. We've had Howard
Kane,
and all his
very
family. Oh, we've had Howard, yes, and the family. And people have always seemed to enjoy it. It's still going today. I'm not on the committee now because I retired 3 years ago. the time comes when you've got to say enough's enough, you know. But I think it's nice, and most people are interested, and we usually get them to come to our meetings.
This is Women's Day on Manx Radio, 27 minutes past 2. Now, just before the break, we heard from NCT's Elizabeth Duff, who was speaking about their new campaign, Beyond Baby Blues, that's encouraging people to talk more openly about maternal mental health and to really encourage people to seek the help they need. We want to hear your thoughts on this. Just how easy is it for us to talk about this issue? What is stopping us from raising it with new mums? Text 166 177, or you can email womentoday@manxradio.com. Kate, obviously, as we always say when we're talking about things like this, you obviously don't have your own children, but I wonder how you feel about the fact that we're talking about something that could potentially, if you decided to have a baby, could potentially be a problem.
I think it would be easy to be absolutely terrified by it and to be put off even more the idea of having children I think as soon as you start the topic of having children or raising children, it's just like opening a can of worms. There seems to be issue. But I think it is actually reassuring that these kind of campaigns exist and that we are talking about these issues so that, you know, potentially as I get to a stage where I might think about having children, hopefully even more of the stigma will have been taken away from it, and it will be even easier to talk about these kind of things than perhaps it is now.
I think from a personal experience, I know it was a massive shock, and I have said it on this show before, it was a massive shock for me when I first had my son, and I did expect that, you know, the romantic notion of that instant bonding, and it was going to be fantastic, and when I didn't feel that, I completely felt like I'd failed, that I'd let him down. And it took, you know, I was really lucky and had a fantastic health visitor who was really, really understanding and just said, you know, in some ways having a baby is like having a stranger move into your house. You have to get to know them, and that bond and that love has to grow. And that really made it a lot easier for me. But I still think we have this unrealistic expectation. And I've got a friend who had a baby about 12 weeks ago, and she texted me after 9 weeks saying, I don't think my baby likes me. I just feel really awful. And I just think we are just that pressure to be a perfect mother straight away is really, really harmful.
How easy did you find it to start talking to your health visitor? You say she was amazing, but how easy was it to even start that conversation?
Yeah, probably not very, actually. It was probably, I think I went through the stage where I'd go out with him and sort of look around at everybody and imagine everyone was watching me going, oh, look what a great mother she is, look, she's doing all the right things. And I think it was a hard conversation to start having.
Because that's the bit that Elizabeth, is how do you start that conversation as a concerned friend? I don't have that many friends at the moment who've had children, but I do have a few. And I was thinking, if I was worried about one of them, how would I start that conversation without, because I would be so conscious of not wanting them to feel like they'd failed and feel those emotions. I wouldn't want them to become instantly defensive. And I also really, really wouldn't want to, no matter how worried I was, broach a topic that I thought might trigger even more worry or concern or spark that kind of worry and concern as well. So I just don't know how I'd start it.
I think you're absolutely right, because there is that sort of sense that if you said anything that maybe, you know, you're suggesting that they're not doing well enough. It's really difficult. Pam Quine, you have got 2 daughters. You had them a little while ago. How was the notion of, I don't know, the baby blues as it's being referred to here, how was that dealt with when you had your children?
Well, with the first girl, I think it's all so new and so different that you have to get adjusted to, oh, am I doing the right thing? And, you know, as far as feeding's concerned. And it's just so different from anything else you've ever dealt with before. And I think a lot of people can feel, oh, I don't think I'm doing this right or whatever, you know. But I think, and then with the second, it's completely different. Well, you know what you're doing, and you know how to change your nappy and things like that. But I can understand how people can get, you know, depressed and, oh gosh, am I going to have to put up with this crying at night and all this sort of thing. We were fortunate in a way, weren't we? They weren't too bad. Only when they were cutting teeth.
And how good was Jeff? I mean, at changing nappies and things like that. It's a different generation, isn't it? Was he, a hands-on father? Would you say? Pam?
Oh, he was a hands-on father when he was there, but he was out at work all day. You see, and of course I'd given up by this time, and I was off about 8 or 9 years, and I didn't go back then until they were both at school. But oh yes, Jeff was wonderful with the girls, and
Well, we've got some comments in. Broaching the topic with my partner was the hardest part for me. I felt like I'd failed him, but once I did speak openly with him, it was so much easier to talk to others. I felt like I had a team member with me, someone who wouldn't give up. We've had another text saying, I had postnatal depression and my biggest fear was telling anyone I felt lonely and sad. As I had a lovely baby, house, I thought the symptoms would go, and I hid them until the baby was a year old, at which point, when it came out, I was in a very bad state. I would get help sooner if it happened with another pregnancy. And another text in from a father who says it's a very scary situation for the father too. I'm afraid to say I hadn't a clue and was nothing like as sympathetic as I probably should have been at times. My wife turned angry, clingy and occasionally violent towards me. She was just prescribed antidepressants by the doctor and sent off. Luckily she didn't take the tablets as the feeling frightened her. Fortunately she did manage to pull herself around without much help from me, it has to be said, but it was a very worrying time.
You might remember a while ago I went to a daddy baby care session, which is a session for new fathers or fathers-to-be on the island at Nobles Hospital. And I was really impressed to see there that when they're talking to new fathers, they talk about the symptoms of postnatal depression and what they should be looking for in their partners or wives or the mother of their child. And I thought that was fantastic. But they also said, which I think was really important too, that sometimes a dad can feel down and isolated, and it is important that that man goes and gets help as well, and I think that's maybe something we need to talk about more as well.
Keep your thoughts coming in, Women's Day at manxradio.com, or you can text 166 177. And something else about mental health which caught our attention this week is Ken Livingstone, who suggested a shadow defence minister who criticised him needed psychiatric help, and Kevin Jones, who has suffered with depression, said those comments were gravely offensive. Now, Mr Livingstone initially refused to apologise despite being urged to do so by the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, but he then tweeted, I unreservedly apologise to Kevin Jones for my comments. They should not have been made at all, let alone in this context. I also make this apology because Jeremy is right to insist on a more civil politics, and as a party we should take this seriously. So we've just been talking about maternal mental health. Kate, what did you think of Ken Livingstone's comments? Was he right to apologise eventually for them?
I think he was right to eventually apologise, but I think the problem is that he apologised for basically people being offended rather than for what he'd said. I watched his appearance on Newsnight and I felt like it wasn't the most sincere of apologies I've ever seen. But I don't think we should get caught up in what one man says or what one man does. I think we need to look more about why are we using phrases like that? Why are we kind of flippantly saying someone needs psychiatric help instead of thinking more in depth about why we seem to still think it's okay to use words like mad or mental or psycho. There are a lot of things that go into it, I think.
There is still that stigma associated, and we've talked about how you deal with that when it's something that does affect so many people.
I think it's about understanding, we were just talking about maternal mental health and about the fact that can happen to absolutely anyone. And I think if we start to understand more about mental health problems and things people go through, and the fact that it can be anyone from any background with any situations they're dealing with, that I think that level of understanding can only help us to kind of watch what we're saying and think about our words before we use them.
A few more comments, Kate.
Yeah, we've had a message on Facebook to say, I went to a mental health clinic to help me to cope with the loss of a loved one. Every job I have to declare that I've been to a mental health clinic. I actually wanted someone to talk to and listen to and help me with the grieving process.
We also had a text in from a mother who says, we adopted 3 children and I had post-adoption depression, which I'd never heard of. I imagine that women who gave birth instantly love their babies, even if they did suffer postnatal depression in an awful way. It's comforting to know that we are all the same.
Hello, I'm Mrs Burton. I'm the head teacher at Williston School.
Hi, my name's Bo Brown. I'm in Year 5. Hi, my name is Daniel Kinraid and I'm in Year 5.
Hello, I'm Sophia Rango and I'm in Year 5.
Hi, I'm Molly Rees and I'm in Year 6.
Hi, I'm Faith Kelly and I'm in Year 6.
Hello, my name is Katie Cusack and I'm in Year 6.
Today is Williston's 60th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. The school opened in 1955. Now, it was actually officially opened on the 17th of November, but since going in our underground and unearthing all of the archives down there, I've actually found out the official opening was on the 17th of November, but the first pupils actually came to the school in January of 1955.
And what have you got here, a logbook?
I have got a logbook from the very first day the school was opened. And here we have, it was Williston Primary Infant School opened today, and the headmistress was a Miss E.H. Oates, and there were two teachers, Miss D. Devereux and Miss E. Cartwright. And its logbooks go on all throughout the 60 years. There's logbooks throughout the whole of the 60 years. Not always complete, but there's many of them. Two children, on 5th of January, 2 children were admitted today, making number on roll 50. Number on roll today is 190, so we've come on quite a long way since then.
So the idea of today is to have an open afternoon. You're hoping as many, I guess, past pupils, anybody who's had an association with the school comes along. What are they going to see here?
OK, when they arrive, we've got it planned to military precision. We have tour guides. Our children will have a flag, and they will have 10 people in their group, and they will take guests through the decades, because each class has been learning about a decade. So we've gone from the 50s right up to what we call the Nowies, and that's our reception. They've been doing the Nowies. So the guides will take our guests through all of the decades, where they'll go into the classrooms and see what the children have been learning, and then the event will culminate in a lovely tea party in our hall.
And I'm wondering whether you've got any parents who used to be pupils here who are going to be coming back and having that walk through memory lane.
Oh, I think so. There's many. We've been unearthing so many pictures from through the decades, class photographs, and the children are more excited than many, because there's my mum, there's my dad, there's my auntie. So already we're seeing familiar faces. It's quite unusual to see how many of the mums and dads are just like the children now. You can actually see the resemblance.
Did your mum go here?
Yeah, I'm my mum's sister.
And have you found some pictures of them?
Yeah.
And what does she remember? She told you anything about what she remembers about being at school here?
Well, not much stuff, but she said it was very different to now, like how it is now in school.
Do you think she was naughty at school?
No.
Tell me about what you've been doing.
We've been doing about 1950s.
And what have you learnt about that decade?
That Elvis sung Hound Dog.
Do you want to give us a rendition of that? Do you know how that song goes?
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, yeah. Rockin' old time.
Love it. What else have we been doing? Loads of pictures?
Yeah, we done... everyone painted a picture about an important person in the 1950s. And some people done the Queen, Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn.
And what happened with the Queen in the 1950s?
She got coronated in 1953 and she became Queen in 1952 at the age of 25.
What do you think school was like in the 1950s here at Williston?
Well, I think it was quite small, different to now.
Would you like to have been here then, do you think?
Mm,
Teachers might have been a bit stricter then.
Don't know.
The way to know if someone's rich is if they had rotten teeth from the rich chocolate.
Really? And how's it been looking through all those photographs? Have you found some funny ones?
Yeah.
Why is it so important, Mrs. Burton, for all the children to be involved in this?
Oh, I think, the history of our school is so vital for them to know that it's not just now, that there were a lot of times and events that went on before now. I think history is so important for us all to know because it affects our future.
And Williston is so key in this community, isn't it? I mean, how is the community responding to this?
Oh, it's great. I mean, we hope we'll see this afternoon loads of people coming and joining in the fun, and already parents who are picking children up from school have popped in and had a little look, and I remember, and we've had so many people giving artefacts. I mean, when we walk around the school, you'll see there's so many artefacts that have been brought into the school for us to show and share. It's been great.
Should we go and have a quick look at some of them?
Oh, let's, yes.
Right, so here we are in the foyer area. What have we got here?
This is our introduction, so we've got just a little snapshot of every decade of Williston through the decades, so just a little taster of what you will see. We've got a report here from the 1960s. I don't know whether this lady will turn up, but thankfully it's quite a good report, so I'm sure she won't be too bothered. We've got letters from the official opening. We've got newspaper articles from different decades. We've got photograph of the official opening on November the 17th, 1955, and a photograph of what the classroom looked like on that first day.
And that's everybody in the whole school.
Oh, is it? Really? Yeah, because it would say there were only, 48 until January.
14, I wasn't there.
They look pretty happy though, don't they? They do. Right.
That was our old classroom.
Was it?
What decade do you think these are from?
That's a really good question. I would say, I mean, that looks fairly early. I mean, that's that camera there, 1950s? Is that that one? Yeah. I'd say that's probably 1950s as well.
There's the first.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. The first iPod. Oh my goodness. You can't put that on a history shelf, Mrs. Burton.
I'm afraid you can. Things move so fast nowadays. I think the iPhone 5 is history now, isn't it?
Oh dear. Right, so let's carry on up here. Welcome to the 60s. And, some pictures.
Some pictures here of them.
Oh, brilliant. Some great outfits. Are any of you on here?
This is year 6.
This is me. This is me.
Oh, there you are. Oh, brilliant.
Neil Armstrong.
Flower power.
So we're going into this classroom.
This is year 6.
Okay.
The 60s.
See, even I don't remember all of
We
this.
also did some cutouts of fashion.
Oh my goodness, they're huge.
We done something like
Drawn
that.
around someone. We drawn around someone and we coloured them in.
Would you like to wear clothes like that?
No.
I'd like to wear that very groovy, colourful top. That was too.
Flower power.
Sitting in the morning sun.
Any more? Is that all we're getting?
No, we're not getting you, don't you?
More 1960s.
Moon landing.
Oh, yeah, very important thing that happened. It's amazing to think there were people in this school at the time that happened, isn't it?
And in 1950s, they sent Russia sent the first dog to the moon. Buddy Holly died 1959, the day the music died.
Oh, we've got some music going now. Mrs. Burton getting her funky groove on. I mean, there's no doubt about the enthusiasm the children have got for this. What do you think they've got from the whole process?
Oh, just learning together and the excitement of sort of... Different decades are exciting. Apart from just what's going on in the school, how the school has changed, just learning about the life of different decades is very exciting for the children. They've thrown themselves into that with great gusto.
And which is your favourite decade?
I would have to say the 60s. Not that I knew anything about the 60s. No, far too young for that.
Happy birthday, Williston School!
Thanks as always to our amazing guests. And as ever, it's never too late for you to get involved. Head over to Facebook, find the Women Today Facebook page, and you can comment there, or you can follow us at MR Women Today on Twitter. And you can listen again to the full programmes on manxradio.com or join us every weekday live from just after 2 o'clock.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.